One slap, that was the breaking point. My sister Tara humiliated me in front of the entire family, all because I refused to lend her my car. But what happened next? I wasn't about to be the person everyone walked all over anymore. I cut ties, set boundaries, and did something so unexpected that it left Tara begging for my forgiveness. This isn't just a story of revenge, it's the moment I stopped being everyone's doormat and started reclaiming my life. My name is Emma. I'm 28 years old and I've always considered myself independent, especially when it comes to my family. People who know me well would say I've got a calm exterior, but the truth is, I've spent most of my life putting on that calm face because underneath it, I've always been the one holding everything together, making the sacrifices and keeping the peace. If there's one thing I've learned over the years, it's that being the responsible one doesn't always get you the respect you deserve. Growing up, I was the quiet one, the good daughter, the one who never caused trouble, the one who followed the rules. My sister Tara was the complete opposite. Loud, outgoing, and seemingly always at the center of attention, she was the golden child, the one my parents bragged about to anyone who'd listen. Tara always knew how to charm people, always had a new boyfriend, a new project, and never seemed to be held back by anything. While I was busy studying, working, and building my career, Tara was always out living her best life, demanding attention, and, more often than not, financial support. I never minded helping her, though, at least not in the beginning. I'd loan her money for her latest fashion splurge, help her cover a late rent payment, or bail her out when her car broke down, again. After all, we were family, and I figured it was just part of being a good sister. But as time went on, something began to shift. Tara's demands started to feel less like requests and more like expectations. And I? Well, I kept on giving. I kept on saying yes, even when it hurt me financially or emotionally, because that's what I thought family was supposed to do. Support one another, no questions asked. It was a Sunday afternoon when everything came to a head. Our parents were hosting a family gathering at their house. I was busy in the kitchen helping Mom prep the dinner, the kind of thing I always did when they had guests over. Tara, of course, was in the living room, lounging on the couch, talking about her latest trip to Paris and casually mentioning how her car had broken down. Yet again, she started asking if she could borrow mine. Now, my car isn't just any car. It's the one thing I've worked for, saved for, and made sure to take care of. It's my pride and joy. I didn't mind sharing it with people I trusted, but Tara wasn't exactly the best driver, and honestly, I was tired of being the one who had to clean up after her every time she got into trouble. I hesitated for a moment, then firmly said, "No, Tara, I can't lend you my car." Her reaction was instantaneous. She froze, her eyes narrowing, and then, without warning, she stood up, walked right up to me, and slapped me across the face. It was sharp, quick, and utterly shocking. The entire room went silent. I could hear my mom gasp, my dad mumble something, but I just stood there, stunned, feeling the sting on my cheek. It wasn't the slap itself that hurt. It was the sheer audacity of it, the public humiliation of it, the absolute disrespect. I don't know what was more painful, the physical sting or the fact that Tara thought she had the right to treat me this way in front of our family. For a brief moment, I thought about reacting, about shouting at her, about slapping her back, but something inside me shifted, something deeper, and I realized I wasn't going to let her or anyone else get away with this anymore. So instead of making a scene, I did the one thing that would hit harder than any slap. I stayed silent. The room was still and everyone was watching, waiting for me to explode. But I didn't. I just turned on my heel and walked away. I didn't say anything, I didn't cry. I just left. I could feel Tara's eyes on me, but I didn't look back. I walked out of the house, through the front door, and into the cool night air. I felt a strange calm wash over me. Maybe it was the shock of what had just happened, or maybe it was something else. A realization that I'd been treated like this for far too long. This wasn't just about a car. This was about years of being taken for granted, of being dismissed and overlooked, of being the family member everyone turned to when they needed something, but never once being asked if I needed anything in return. As I walked to my car and sat inside, the tears didn't come. I was too angry, too exhausted. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't worried about Tara or my parents. I wasn't focused on what I could do for them next. For once, I was only thinking about myself, about how much I had given and how little I had received in return. When I got home that night, I didn't call anyone. I didn't respond to the flood of messages from my family. I didn't care. The next day, I went to work like usual, but something had changed inside me. I wasn't going to let Tara treat me like a doormat anymore. I wasn't going to let anyone treat me like I didn't matter. I wasn't sure what the next step was, but I knew one thing. I was done being the person who always gave and never got anything back. From that moment on, things were going to be different. The next few days after the incident with Tara were a blur. I went to work, handled my meetings, and went about my daily routine as if nothing had changed, but everything had. I kept my distance from my family, not responding to their calls or texts. I knew they were waiting for me to apologize or make some sort of gesture to fix things, but I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. I've always been the one to smooth things over, to be the peacemaker. It's exhausting, really. You find yourself sacrificing your own feelings to keep everyone else happy, keeping the peace at all costs, even when you're quietly falling apart on the inside. But that slap, it broke something in me. I wasn't falling apart anymore. I wasn't playing that role anymore. For the first time, I wasn't worried about fixing things. I wasn't concerned with being the bigger person. I just wanted peace, my peace, and I was ready to fight for it. Tara didn't waste any time. She started texting me nonstop. At first, the messages were polite, asking if I was okay. She even tried to sound sympathetic, like she was genuinely concerned about how I was feeling. But as the hours passed, her tone shifted. She went from sweet and apologetic to frustrated and angry. "Emma, why are you doing this?" "I said I was sorry, it was just a mistake. Can we talk?" The texts read. I ignored them. Then the messages started getting more desperate. "Don't do this to Mom. Don't do this to the family. You're just being petty now." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, but I refused to react. If there's one thing I've learned over the years, it's that people will only continue to walk all over you if you let them. Tara was used to me forgiving her, used to me always being the one to cave, the one to come running when she needed something. The first time she called, I stared at my phone for a few seconds, my finger hovering over the decline button. For a moment, I thought about answering, about explaining myself, about making her understand why I was so upset. But no, this time I wasn't going to give her that. I wasn't going to explain my feelings. She didn't deserve to hear my hurt or my disappointment. She had made her choice when she slapped me in front of the entire family. I wasn't going to make excuses for her behavior anymore. The calls kept coming. The texts kept flooding my phone. But I didn't respond. I let them sit there, unread, unanswered. It was as if every text, every ring of my phone, was a reminder that I had finally taken control. Finally, a shift was happening inside me. I was no longer the person who waited for an apology or for things to return to normal. I was becoming someone who valued their own peace over the constant drama. Days passed, and eventually my silence became deafening. I didn't talk to my parents, didn't acknowledge my sister's attempts to reach out. It was as if I had vanished from their lives, and in a way, I had. It wasn't that I didn't care about them, it's just that I had finally realized that I couldn't keep pouring from an empty cup. I had been running on fumes for too long, trying to meet their needs while neglecting my own, but not anymore. It wasn't long before I began to notice a shift in the family dynamic. My parents, who had always sided with Tara in every argument, started to reach out to me. Not because they were concerned about my well-being, but because they needed something. It was subtle at first. Small things like, "Emma, can you check if Tara's car's fixed yet?" Or, "Tara's really upset about the car. Can you talk to her?" I didn't respond. I didn't have to. I wasn't angry anymore, but I was clear. I wasn't going to be their fixer anymore. I wasn't going to be their emotional punching bag, the one they turned to when they needed help, but never bothered to acknowledge when I needed anything in return. It was the first time in years I felt free. Free from the guilt, free from the weight of being the family's problem solver. But I wasn't done yet. The next time I heard from Tara, it would be different. I wasn't going to let her or anyone else treat me this way anymore. A week had passed since the slap. Tara had tried calling again, but this time it wasn't just an apology or an excuse. This time it was a plea. "I know you're upset. Her voice trembled over the phone. But Mom's worried. Please, can we just talk? I didn't mean to hurt you, I swear. I was just frustrated. Please, Emma, I need you. The family needs you. I could hear the desperation in her voice, but it didn't sway me. It wasn't enough. She was still trying to make me feel guilty for standing up for myself. She was still trying to manipulate me into forgiving her, into going back to being the doormat she always saw me as. I took a deep breath, my grip tightening around the phone. I had thought about how I would respond, but when the moment came, I knew there was only one thing to say. You don't get to treat me like this anymore, Tara. You don't get to slap me, humiliate me, and then come back expecting things to go back to normal. I'm done being your backup, your fall guy, your emotional crutch. You need to start taking responsibility for your actions and stop leaning on everyone else to clean up your mess. I'm not doing this anymore. There was silence on the other end, a long, uncomfortable pause. Tara didn't say anything at first, but I knew she was processing what I had said. I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head. I'm sorry, she finally whispered. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just didn't know what else to do. Maybe you should start figuring it out for yourself, I replied, my voice steady but firm. The silence that followed wasn't the kind of silence I used to fear. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a silence that told me I had made my point. It wasn't about winning the argument. It was about me standing up for myself and letting her know that I wouldn't be the person she could push around anymore. I hung up the phone and leaned back in my chair, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't a moment of victory, it was a moment of clarity. I had finally drawn the line, and I wasn't crossing it. The next few days felt like a strange kind of calm after the storm. It wasn't peace, not exactly. It was more like the quiet that follows after you've made a decision that changes everything. I had set my boundaries, and now it was time to wait and see what would happen next. I had no idea if Tara would come around or if things between us would remain fractured. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't go back to the way things were. Tara didn't contact me immediately after our last conversation. It was like she was giving me space, or maybe, just maybe, she was starting to realize that things weren't going to be the same anymore. The silence from her was both unsettling and strangely liberating. I'd been so used to her always needing something, money, attention, emotional support, that it felt like a void when it stopped. The usual barrage of calls and texts, always expecting something from me, had abruptly ceased. At first I wondered if she was just angry or if she was genuinely processing the conversation. But as the days stretched on, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. There was no guilt gnawing at my insides, no anxiety about whether or not I was doing the right thing. I wasn't constantly on edge, wondering when Tara would come to me with another crisis. I had finally put myself first, and for the first time, it felt like the right decision. It wasn't just Tara who had always taken from me, it was the entire family. Over the years, I had been the one who was always called upon when things went wrong, whether it was picking up the pieces after a falling out, taking care of the logistics when someone needed help, or, of course, the financial support when someone was too careless with their own affairs. No one had ever once stopped to ask me if I was okay. They'd never checked in to see if I needed anything. It was always assumed that I was fine, that I would always be there to fix whatever problem arose. And then it hit me. Maybe I'd been doing this all wrong. Maybe I'd been the one enabling this cycle of dependency, this expectation that I would always be the one to pick up the slack. Maybe by being the reliable one, I had inadvertently conditioned my family to treat me as if my time, my energy, my resources were theirs for the taking. For the first time, I stopped feeling bad for saying no. I stopped feeling guilty for not answering the calls or for not offering to help when they asked. I realized that my family, specifically Tara, didn't have the right to keep demanding things from me. I wasn't their safety net. I wasn't their doormat. But as empowering as it was to set these boundaries, it wasn't easy. The guilt would still creep in from time to time. I'd get a message from Mom asking if I'd heard from Tara, and I'd feel that old tug of obligation, the part of me that used to rush in to fix things. I'd catch myself thinking, maybe I should call and check in. Maybe I should just let it go and be the bigger person. But each time, I reminded myself why I was doing this. I reminded myself that self-respect didn't come from giving and giving until you were drained. It came from knowing when to say no and understanding that you didn't owe anyone your energy if they weren't willing to treat you with respect in return. A few weeks went by and I started to settle into this new rhythm. I didn't feel angry anymore, just resolute. Then one evening, I received a message that caught me off guard. It was from my mom, and this time, it wasn't a request for me to fix something or help with Tara. It was different. "Emma, can we talk?" That was it. No explanation. No apology for the way Tara had treated me. No mention of the slap or the way she'd publicly humiliated me. It was like nothing had ever happened. It was just a simple request for a conversation, as though the past few weeks of silence were nothing more than a bump in the road. At first, I debated ignoring it. I debated letting it slide and continuing with my life without looking back. But then I realized that this was the moment where I had to decide whether I would continue to let my family back into my life on their terms, or if I was finally going to take control and set clear boundaries with them too. I decided to respond. "What about? I just want to talk. I know things have been tense. Can we just sit down and have a conversation?" I took a deep breath before typing out my reply. I knew this wouldn't be easy. The conversation I was about to have could either heal things or completely sever the already fragile ties with my family. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I had to face it, because I had come too far to turn back now. "I'm willing to talk, but I'm not going back to the way things were. I'm not going to keep fixing things for everyone. I have boundaries now, and I expect them to be respected." There was a long pause before she responded. A part of me was afraid that this was going to be the moment when my family would completely shut me out. But when her reply came, I was surprised. It was simple, but for the first time, it felt like an acknowledgement of my feelings. "I understand. We'll talk. Just please come home for dinner tomorrow night. We miss you." I couldn't deny the weight of that message. It was a small step forward, but it was a step nonetheless. For the first time in years, I felt like I had been heard, not just as the one who fixed things, but as a person with my own needs and emotions. They were offering me something, a chance to be a part of their lives again, but on my terms. That was the first sign that my boundaries had made a difference. The next evening, I walked into my parents' house. The air was thick with tension, but there was something different about it. The usual chaos, the unspoken expectations, the need for me to solve everyone's problems, it wasn't there. It was just a quiet dinner with my family. And for the first time, I wasn't there to fix anything. I was just there to be. I sat down at the table and we ate in an almost uncomfortable silence. Then Mom spoke up, her voice tentative. "I know things have been hard between us, Emma," she said, "but I want you to know that I see what you're doing. I see the changes in you and I respect them. You're right. Everyone has taken you for granted for too long. I'm sorry." I didn't know how to respond at first. The words felt so foreign coming from her, but I simply nodded, acknowledging the apology but not letting it change my stance. I wasn't about to let them think that an apology could erase years of neglect and disrespect. But this was a start. That night, I went home feeling lighter. My family wasn't perfect. Tara wasn't perfect. But for the first time in my life, I was learning how to put myself first. And I knew it wasn't just a lesson for me. It was a lesson they needed to learn too. The dinner with my parents felt like a fragile victory, but I knew it was only the beginning. The changes I had made weren't going to be easy for anyone to accept. Not Tara, not Mom, and definitely not Dad. For years, I had played the role of the reliable, always available daughter, the one who would clean up the mess and pick up the slack. To suddenly break free from that mold had shifted the balance in our family, and I wasn't sure what the fallout would look like. A few days after the dinner, the storm I had been waiting for arrived. Tara called me, but this time, her voice wasn't sweet or apologetic. It was filled with anger, frustration, and a touch of desperation. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why can't you just let it go? It was a mistake. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean to slap you." "But you're being so cold, Emma. You're punishing the whole family because of one stupid mistake." I leaned against the kitchen counter, my fingers tracing the edges of a cup I wasn't drinking from. It felt strange to be on the receiving end of such an emotional outburst after all these years of me being the one to bear the burden of everyone else's chaos. Tara, I'm not punishing anyone, I said, my voice calm but firm. I'm just not going to let you or anyone else treat me like I'm some backup plan anymore. I'm not your emotional crutch, and I'm not going to keep enabling this toxic behavior. If you're sorry, prove it. But I'm not going to keep letting you walk all over me just because you think I owe you something. She went silent for a moment, and I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head. This was different from all our previous fights. Normally, Tara would have gotten what she wanted in the end, whether it was my car, my money, or my forgiveness. But this time, I wasn't backing down. I don't need your help, I added, my voice softer now. But if you want me in your life, you're going to have to show me that you respect me, not just when it's convenient for you, but all the time. I'm not your backup anymore. There was a long pause. Finally, she spoke again, but this time her voice was softer, almost like she was processing what I had said. I don't know what to do with this new you, Emma. You've always been the one to forgive me, no matter how badly I screwed up. Now it feels like you're shutting me out. I'm not shutting you out, I said, my heart pounding as I realized the full weight of what I was saying. I'm just setting boundaries. I've been trying to make everyone happy for so long, Tara, but I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not going to keep forgiving you for things that should never have happened in the first place. You've got to figure things out for yourself now. The line went quiet, and I could feel the tension stretching between us. For a moment, I thought she might hang up, but she didn't. She just sat there, silently, as if trying to come to terms with a reality that had been difficult for her to accept. I don't know if I can do this, she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know if I can be the person you want me to be. I don't know how to fix this. Then start by not expecting me to fix it for you, I replied. There was no dramatic resolution, no moment where everything magically fell into place. But there was something else. A shift. Tara was struggling, and I knew that, but that was no longer my responsibility. For the first time, I wasn't trying to solve her problems for her. I wasn't rushing in to make everything okay. Over the next few weeks, things were tense. My phone stayed mostly quiet, with only occasional messages from mom or dad, checking in on me or asking if I was planning to visit again. I didn't go back to the family dinners right away, even though I could feel their quiet disappointment. They didn't fully understand the changes I was making, and I wasn't ready to explain them. They needed to feel the weight of my absence before they could truly understand the cost of what I had been doing for them all these years. But as time passed, I started to feel a different kind of pressure. I had always been the person who fixed things, the person who could smooth over every problem, no matter how big or small. Now I wasn't. And it felt strange, disorienting even. I had spent so long in this role that it was hard to shake it off completely. There were moments when I missed being needed, when I questioned whether I was being too harsh or too rigid in my new boundaries. But every time I started to waver, I remembered the slap, the sting on my cheek, the humiliation in front of everyone. I remembered how many times I had been used, how many times I had sacrificed myself for the sake of family and was met with nothing but disregard. That was the moment I realized that I had to stand firm. If I didn't, I would lose myself. I had already lost so much by always putting everyone else first. A few weeks later, Tara reached out again. This time, the message was different. It wasn't full of anger or frustration or demands. It was simple, honest even. I've been thinking about everything. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I've been selfish, and I realize that now. I don't know if I can ever make it up to you, but I want to try. I stared at the message for a while before responding. I didn't need her apology to feel validated, but I did need her to understand that things could never go back to how they were. I'm glad you're realizing that. But Tara, you have to understand that I'm not going to be the person I was anymore. I can't keep fixing everything for you. I'm not the person you think I am, and I'm not going to let you treat me like I'm disposable. The response I received was a simple, I understand. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I didn't know what the future would hold, or if things would ever go back to some version of normal. But what I did know was that I was finally free. I was free from the role I had played for so long, free from the endless cycle of taking care of everyone else and being taken for granted. For the first time, I was living my life on my own terms, and it felt good. As the weeks turned into months, the silence between Tara and I remained, but it didn't feel as heavy. I had learned to stand up for myself, and I was learning how to let go of the guilt. The family, too, had begun to adapt. My parents, although still unsure about the new dynamic, started treating me with more respect. Not because they suddenly understood me, but because they had no choice. I wasn't going to let them use me anymore. And as for Tara, well, we hadn't reconciled completely, but I didn't need to fix her anymore. That was the lesson I had learned. You can't make people change, and you certainly can't carry them for the rest of their lives. I had done enough. Now it was time to live for me. Time has a way of shifting things, doesn't it? At first, I wasn't sure if I could hold the ground I'd gained after setting those boundaries. But as the weeks passed, I began to feel the weight of the decisions I'd made lifting off my shoulders. The constant pressure to fix things, to be the solution to everyone's problems, was no longer my burden to carry. I wasn't just living for myself, I was learning how to stay true to myself in a world that had always expected me to bend for others. The change in my relationship with my family was slow, painfully slow, but it was real. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't always easy, but it was real. My parents, who had once been quick to defend Tara and dismiss my feelings, started to understand that I wasn't someone they could just walk all over anymore. There were moments when I still felt the familiar sting of their disappointment or their quiet judgment, but I knew that I couldn't keep chasing their approval. I had to be okay with the fact that they might never fully get it. One evening, a few months after everything had started to shift, my mom called. Her voice was softer this time, and I could tell she was trying. She was never great at showing vulnerability, but there was something in the way she spoke that made me feel like she was making an effort to meet me halfway. I know things haven't been easy between us, and I've been thinking a lot about what you said. I just want you to know that I see what you're doing, Emma. You're taking care of yourself for once, and that matters. I'm proud of you. Those words, simple but powerful, were all I needed to hear. For years, I had longed for my parents to acknowledge me, to see me for who I really was. But the truth was, I had been looking for validation in all the wrong places. The moment I stopped seeking their approval and started prioritizing myself, I began to find my own sense of pride. And in return, I was starting to see that they were finally starting to respect that. But the most significant change wasn't with my parents. It was with Tara. Over the months that followed the slap, there were moments of contact. Some of it was brief, others awkward. But we never really talked about the slap. We didn't need to. It was clear that the way we interacted had changed forever. She didn't expect me to drop everything for her anymore. And I didn't expect her to suddenly become the perfect sister. We were finding our way, slowly but steadily. It wasn't until a few months later, when Tara sent me a message out of the blue, that I realized how far things had come. It was simple, straightforward, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like there was a hidden agenda. I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I realize I was wrong. I treated you terribly, and I've been selfish. I'm sorry. I don't know if we can fix everything, but I want to try. I stared at the message for a long time. There was a part of me that wanted to respond with all the hurt and resentment I had built up over the years. I wanted to say everything I had been holding inside, the frustration, the years of being taken for granted, the anger that had never really gone away. But I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath and simply replied, "I'm glad you're acknowledging it, Tara, but we both have to work at this. I can't keep pretending everything's fine if it's not." Her response came quickly. "I get it. I'm not asking for everything to go back to how it was. I just don't want us to be like this anymore. I want to try." And so we began again. It wasn't easy. It wasn't the same, but it was real. For the first time, I wasn't the one giving everything away. I wasn't the one bending to make things work. I was standing my ground and she was meeting me halfway. Slowly, we started to rebuild what had been broken, not because I was willing to forget, but because I was ready to move forward. There were still challenges. There were still moments of tension, of old habits rearing their ugly heads. But with each passing day, I felt a little more empowered. I didn't need Tara's approval. I didn't need my family's validation. I had finally learned how to stand up for myself, how to be okay with the fact that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away when things aren't right. As the months passed, I found myself focusing more on my career, on my friendships, and on the things that really mattered to me. I had spent so many years putting everyone else first, sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of others, that I had forgotten what it felt like to live for myself. But now, I was learning how to do just that. I'd always been the one to put others' needs above my own. I'd been the one who fixed everything, who patched up the cracks in the family, and made sure everyone was okay. But now, I was finally starting to take care of myself, and it felt like the most radical thing I could do. One night, not long after the conversation with Tara, I sat down to think about everything that had happened. The slap, the silence, the slow rebuilding of relationships, it all felt like a distant memory now. But I knew it had been the turning point in my life. That was the moment I had stopped being afraid of losing people by setting boundaries. That was the moment I had realized that my worth didn't depend on what anyone else thought of me. The next morning, I woke up early, brewed a cup of coffee, and sat by the window staring out at the quiet street below. I didn't feel the weight of the past anymore. I didn't feel the pressure to fix everything, to make everyone happy. For the first time, I felt at peace with who I was and where I was heading. And that peace, no matter how fragile it had seemed at first, was mine. It was something I had earned, something I had fought for, and I wasn't ever going to let anyone take it away from me again. The family dynamic had shifted, yes, but so had I. I wasn't waiting for their approval anymore. I wasn't begging for their love. I had learned to love myself first, and that, in the end, was the greatest lesson I could ever have learned. In the end, Tara did come around. She did try, in her own way, to be better. And maybe that's all we can ask for from people. But I wasn't going to hold my breath waiting for it. I had already learned how to live without their approval. And that, more than anything else, had set me free. A few months passed after the tension between Tara and me, and I began to realize something. I didn't need their validation. The silence between us had become less oppressive, and the weight of constantly trying to fix my family had finally lifted. I wasn't tied to the old roles I had played for so long, and it felt liberating. The most important lesson I'd learned was that self-respect had to come before anything else. The conversations with Tara became fewer, but each one felt more honest, more real. It was clear that she was trying to change, but I knew better than to expect a complete transformation overnight. And I wasn't going to waste my energy trying to force it. What mattered was that I was standing my ground, and she was learning to respect me. There were still moments when my family didn't fully understand. My parents still had trouble letting go of the old dynamics, but they were slowly starting to see that I wasn't going to be their emotional backup anymore. My mom, especially, had made small gestures that showed she was starting to get it. She didn't try to guilt trip me when I said no. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One evening, Tara called me again, but this time the tone was different. She wasn't demanding anything or trying to guilt me into something. It was almost like she was just checking in. "I know I've been hard to deal with," she said, her voice soft. I want you to know I'm trying to be better. I don't want to keep pushing you away." I could hear the sincerity in her voice, and for the first time, I realized I didn't need her to apologize for everything. I didn't need her to grovel. I just needed her to respect the boundaries I had set. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't going to let her use me. I replied simply, "I know. And I'm here, Tara. But things are different now. I'm not the same person who would drop everything for you." That was all I needed to say. We didn't go into a deep conversation, but it felt like the beginning of a new chapter. I had finally stopped letting the past define my actions, and now I was choosing my own path. A few weeks later, I received a message from my parents inviting me to a family dinner. For the first time, there were no expectations, no pressure to fix anything, just an invitation to sit together and enjoy each other's company. I was cautious at first, but I agreed to come. It wasn't about going back to the way things were. It was about moving forward on my own terms. When I arrived at the dinner, it was different. The tension had eased. My parents weren't trying to make up for past mistakes, and Tara wasn't asking for anything. We sat there, eating, talking, and just being. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of everyone's problems. It felt peaceful. I realized in that moment that I had learned to let go of the need to fix everything. I wasn't responsible for their happiness, and I wasn't going to let my own happiness be dictated by anyone else. As the evening came to a close, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in a long time. I was finally free. Free from the expectations, free from the constant pressure, and most importantly, free from the guilt that had kept me in this cycle of giving without receiving. That night, as I drove home, I couldn't help but smile to myself. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, I was walking it with my head held high. I had learned to set boundaries, to put myself first, and to stop letting my family define who I was. And that I realized was the most freeing thing of all.